Hello, I'm Rachel and we are going to be cooking a sausage casserole. So first thing to do if you're having jacket potatoes with it is to spike your jackets with a knife, like this. And then we're going to pop them in the oven, likely to take about an hour and a half, okay? So they're going to go in the oven on about 180 degrees. And then the next thing we're going to do is just cook our sausages. So although I said it's going to take about an hour and a half with the jackets, I've got my sausages here. We're going to cook them now because we need them cooked before we put them in the casserole. So what I've done to most of them, I'll just do the last couple, is we're going to spike them, and it just means that the fat drains out of the sausages into the dish. Okay, just be careful you don't prick yourself. You can put them down on the board if you need to. And again, these will probably take about half an hour, and then just every now and again you just need to turn them over so they get a nice even cook. They're going in the oven. So our sausages are in the oven as well as our jacket potatoes, so I'm just going to get everything else prepped ready, because then once the sausages are cooked it's literally a case of just chucking everything into the pan, heating it up and then popping it in the oven to cook. So I've got here carrots and parsnips. And so I'll just do my final ones with peeling them. I just find the peeler easier than trying to use a knife, but everyone has their own preference. Although I'm using carrot and parsnip, you can use any veg you like really. Sweet potato, you can put onion in it, whatever. And then along with that, we're getting some added protein as well, because we're going to add beans to it. So although we've got the sausages, which is meat with protein in it, we've also got cannellini beans, which are white beans and butter beans, and they just bulk it out. They're quite filling, they're very good for you, and they've got protein in them, and it can actually reduce the amount of meat you need to put into a casserole as well by the time you add all of them in. So casserole's a really easy one because you can literally pop it in the oven once it's all prepared and leave it. Sometimes you can cook it for an hour, sometimes longer. The longer you cook it for, the lower the temperature. But with this one, the carrots and parsnips will be cooked within an hour, and the sausages are already cooked before they go in. So it is a relatively quick casserole to be able to cook for a family meal. Just doing nice little battens, not too thick, so that they all cook evenly through. So just in half, and then in half again like that. And because the veg is in the casserole, you can add extra veg on the side if you want, alongside your casserole and jacket potatoes. But because of this, and actually the beans and the tomatoes we're going to put in also count as some of your 5 a day, you've actually got quite a lot in one meal, so you haven't got to have loads of different pots and pans going, which is good. So that's prepped. So we've got a tin of tomatoes, which we don't need to drain. I'm just going to drain my butter beans and my cannellini beans, so they're ready. And yeah, then it's just a question of waiting for the sausages to cook. So the sausages have been in the oven for half an hour and they're cooked all the way through. So I'm just cutting them into thirds. Now that they're cooked, I like my sausages quite crispy, but if you don't, then they can have less time. And then once these are all chopped into thirds, that's a decent amount of meat for 4 people with the beans on top of it. So now we're going to compile it all into the saucepan, heat it up, and then it just gets popped in the oven with our jacket potatoes until it's ready to go. So before I do anything else, I've just got a stock cube here. I've got a chicken one. I just generally use the chicken stock cube if I'm doing pork, but you can use a beef or a vegetarian one. And this can be adapted, so if you want to do a vegetarian one, you could use veggie sausages, or you can do it without the sausages completely and just put extra beans in and make a bean and vegetable casserole to go with it, to go with your jacket potatoes. So I'm just going to mix that around like that and leave that to dissolve for a minute. Turning my oven on. add my sausages to the pan. You shouldn't need any fat or oil in the pan when you're cooking this, because there's going to be fat still coming off the sausages. And the alternative you can do is you don't need to heat it on the hob like this. You could put it all straight into the casserole dish and into the oven if you're cooking for a decent amount of time. So I've drained my cannellini beans and my butter beans, so I'm going to add them in. With the spoon, start to mix it. And now I'm going to add my tomatoes. And I'm just going to let that heat up for a minute to make sure those ingredients are heated before I put anything else in as well. So I've just mixed that all in and it's heating up. So to that I'm going to add my parsnips and my carrots as well. It looks quite dry at the moment, but we are going to add a bit more moisture in a minute. And once we've got all of those ingredients in, so we want the tomato to kind of coat everything, and the herbs we're going to put in. So we've got our stock cube we're adding in for a bit of extra flavour in here, but we're also going to add some Italian style herbs to our casserole, just to give it a bit of flavour. Sprinkle a bit over, that's probably about a teaspoon. Add that in. There we go. Again, if you coat all the ingredients before the liquid goes in, they kind of get a coating of the flavourings. So now I'm going to add in my cup of hot water with my stock cube that's dissolved in it. Into there. Mix that around. There we go. And I'm just going to add half a cup of hot water now. So I've put 1.5 cups of hot water in here now. Okay, and a tin of tinned tomatoes. So that's where we're getting all of our liquid from. That's starting to all mix in together. So by the time we then cook this, so the jacket potatoes taken out hour and a half. We've had our sausages in for half an hour. So if we cook this for another hour or just under an hour, it should all be ready at the same time, and that will really reduce down the amount of liquid to make a thicker sauce for our casserole. If you feel like it's getting too dry when it's in the oven, you can just add a little bit more hot water, give it a stir and pop it back in the oven. So yeah, that's ready to go in the oven now. We put the jackets on 180, so this can stay on 180, or if your jackets have started to cook, you can drop it down to around 150. So this dish goes in the oven, so I would put it in like this, or you can heat it in a saucepan and then transfer it to like a ceramic china casserole dish to go in the oven. But we're ready.